What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Meek, the Uber Geek, and welcome to Pretty Dece, your weekly show about movies, comics, games, and all the pop culture in between. This is Pretty Dece Season 2, Episode 11 for the week of January 6th, 2019. And I'm back. If you haven't noticed, we haven't had an episode for a little bit now. You might remember from my last episode, it talked about having had a baby, kind of getting back into the swing of life from having that huge, crazy thing happen. And that's still going well. Can report life with the new baby girl is awesome. She's fantastic. Having a kid, especially a young kid going on now, 7 weeks old, is both the most rewarding, awesome thing in the world, and also the most time-consuming, just exhausting thing that can happen to a person. You always hear about it. You hear how tiring it is, and you really don't believe it, but then it actually happens to you. We had a point this past weekend where we just really hadn't slept for kind of multiple nights in a row with her. And literally just had to call my mom in and say hey, can you watch this kid for a few hours so we can get some sleep? So that gives you a good little indication of kind of what's going on in my life. But really, it's fantastic. Would not trade it for the world. It definitely leaves a lot less. It's not necessarily less leisure time. We're watching a lot of television. We've been checking out some good stuff on Hulu and Netflix. Basically anything that you can do while holding a baby. That's really what we've been zeroing in on. It does cut down on a lot of time, at the computer, in the office, doing those sorts of things. And of course, the holidays definitely made things a little rough as well. Lots of running around, visiting family throughout the holidays. So that's kind of the lack of episodes. I'll try to get these out as often as I can. Obviously, lots going on, so can't promise every single on-time Monday release as I had been doing, but I'll do my best to kind of get these out as often as I can because they're super fun to do. I love recording this show. I love talking to you guys about pop culture, about the news. I love doing reviews. I love talking about all this fun stuff. So I try to jump in and do it as often as I can. Today on the show, I wanted to devote to kind of one topic because it's a fun one to dive into. It's kind of the biggest thing that's happening right now, and that is discussion about a new version, a new hardware spec for the Nintendo Switch. So you'll hear that right after the music, which starts right now.
Pretty Dece, here we go. Facebook.com/Pretty Show. It's time to geek out with Josh, your host.
So we've got a new year. We are in 2020, and with the coming of the new year, we have some fresh Switch-related rumors. There's a talk amongst the industry right now that the Nintendo Switch will be getting a new model coming in the 2020 calendar year. This is coming from a Taiwanese electronic newspaper, DigiTimes. They have a report that says the Switch is getting a new model in mid-2020, production beginning on those machines at the end of the first quarter of 2020, sometime around March, and then releasing sometime in the middle of 2020. Now, this has people pretty excited because people hear this news of new Switch hardware, and of course they also know that Microsoft is putting out a new Xbox this year, and Sony's putting out the PlayStation 5, and they think, oh, we're going to get an updated Switch. We're going to get a brand new Switch. It's going to compete with those other new systems. It's going to be great. It's going to be the Switch Pro. And I would caution everyone to definitely pump the brakes on that excitement. Remember last year, before we found out about the Switch Lite, there was rumors at that point as well about a new Switch coming out, a more powerful Switch coming out, a Switch Pro coming out. There was lots and lots of rumors coming out about a device like that, and it never surfaced at the time. The Switch Lite came out, which obviously is not a more powerful device. It's a handheld only. It's aiming at a different market. And we also did get another new Switch last year. You might not remember that, but we got essentially a hardware refresh of the Switch. So it wasn't more powerful. It was in the exact same form factor. It looked exactly like the original Switch, but it had slightly different components inside of it, which the main thing that it got was that it had a slightly better battery life than the original Switch console did. So we actually did get 2 new Switch versions last year. So that Switch Pro that everyone was talking about, I believe, materialized as just a redesign, just a hardware refresh of the original Switch, which for people who hadn't bought a Switch, that was very exciting. They got to go out and get the one that has the slightly better battery, the newest, most advanced version under the hood. But for existing Switch owners who weren't looking to upgrade to the Switch Lite or side grade to the Switch Lite, a Switch that only touted slightly better battery life wasn't really anything to leave home about. That's just something that console manufacturers do. Over the course of a console's lifetime, Microsoft has done this, Sony has done this many times. The parts that go into a console become cheaper or become more expensive. For example, maybe the chip that you used to put in the Switch is now no longer manufactured. Maybe it was easy to get a whole bunch of them sourced very, very cheaply because all of the factories existed to churn them out. Then as the years went on, that chip was needed less and less for other purposes, and maybe it was only used for the Nintendo Switch, so getting them produced became more expensive. Therefore, in order to maintain the price point for your Switch, you go back to the drawing board, you find another chip that'll be very, very similar, exact same power, exact same functionality, but you can produce it cheaper, you can produce it easier, you can produce it faster. So these types of little hardware refreshes, we really started seeing them for the first time when the 360 was in its prime. Microsoft redesigned the internals of the 360 several times, and it didn't really change anything on the outside. It made it cheaper for Microsoft to produce. That's what Nintendo did last year with the Switch refresh, and one has to wonder if that's not what they're doing again this year with this new model that is purported to be coming out. It certainly is the first thing that comes to mind for me. It's something that Nintendo has definitely done before. We've shown us, and producing the contents of the Switch, the chips, all the parts of it are getting more and more outdated. So they're gonna have to kind of keep figuring out how to make those things happen, and it might come with another hardware refresh. So that is the huge grain of salt to kind of pump the brakes on the Switch Pro rumors. But let's flip that coin now and talk about the fact that what if it is a Switch Pro? That's what some industry analysts are saying that it might be, and they're kind of speculating what that could contain, what a Switch Pro device would even look like. So that could go anywhere from maybe support for 4K video, maybe the ability to handle larger cartridge sizes, maybe just better components so things load faster, maybe even different hardware, adding on new functionality that the original Switch just didn't have. Who knows what it could possibly be? Nintendo is definitely no stranger to updating their consoles, to putting out things very akin to the PlayStation Pro and, of course, the Xbox One X. They've done it in their handhelds before. They released an updated version of the original DS called the DSi, and, of course, they put out the new Nintendo 3DS, which not only was a more powerful console, but added an extra thumbstick. If you weren't keeping up with Nintendo handheld hardware at the time, that was a really surprising addition. They literally added dual joysticks essentially on the 3DS. Now, the negative there is that if games want to support that extra joystick, they can only be played on the new 3DS hardware, and they can't take advantage of the massive install base of the entire 3DS hardware, which means that not a lot of games supported that extra stick. And that's always the sticking point for these mid-cycle, slightly upgraded consoles, is that they come out and they don't see the support that that you would hope that they would, because everyone who's making games for these things doesn't want to pigeonhole themselves into the smaller install base of just the people who own the updated version. Now, with that being said, the Switch is an absolute powerhouse of a seller, and judging by the success of the original Switch when it first came out, and now the Switch Lite, Nintendo can just print money with the Switch, essentially. So you have to imagine that coming out with something that is called a Switch Pro, or a new updated Switch, or whatever you want to call it, would sell a lot of units, and they might not have that install base problem that they did have with the new Nintendo 3DS. And of course, also in that same vein, Sony and Microsoft figured out kind of how to fix the issues with that kind of smaller install base on your Pro version of your console with their updated versions of their consoles. Basically, you would sell the one copy of a game, and it would recognize what hardware it was on, and it would be able to play in an enhanced state. So maybe it's 60 frames on the Pro console instead of 30 on the base console. Maybe it runs in 4K on the Pro console instead of 1080p on the base console. So games are smarter than they were when the 3DS came out and when the DSi came out. And we can kind of have those sort of two modes, and we can have those games that automatically scale themselves back if they don't have the horsepower backing them up. So I would love to see something like the Switch Pro. It would be perfectly timed for Nintendo to get released in the summer, to be ahead of the PS5, the Xbox One, to have alongside those other consoles something new to sell, something to put on the shelves for the holiday season. The parents can go out and get the new Nintendo, just like they can get the new PlayStation and the new Xbox. That'd be a really smart business move. But since we did just get the Switch Lite, and we did just get that hardware refresh of the original Switch, I have no idea what this could be. I think that it's equally possible that this is just another slight hardware refresh, and equally possible that this is a completely updated Nintendo Switch model. Nonetheless, this is all still very up in the air. The Switch has, of course, been out since about March 2017. Those new versions rolled out about in August of last year. And we have to wait until at least the middle of this year to kind of figure out what this new version is. So if you are looking to buy a Nintendo Switch, and the Switch Lite is not the direction that you want to go, the fully portable version, you're looking at a big boy regular Switch, you might consider holding off for a few months and maybe jumping in just in case this is a Switch Pro. So that is a lot of in-depth talk about this rumor. This stuff is really fun to speculate about, because obviously we can guess what we would get in an updated Switch console, like what sort of features it would have, and we could dig into kind of the business decisions behind, should you kind of mid-cycle update your consoles, should you not? Does the Switch even need it? Is it playing a different game than the PS5 and the Xbox One? Does it even need to compete with those consoles? Lots of fun questions there as we wait and figure out what this new piece of hardware is. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hit me up on Twitter. Let me know what you think this new Switch might possibly be. And that's going to do it for this week's edition of Pretty Dece. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. If you want to check out more Pretty Dece, head on over to prettydeceshow.com, which is the website. You can find all the past episodes there, links to all the various things, like the YouTube channel. If you prefer to partake of the show in video form, you can find that there. And you can also find the show on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, anything under the sun that you could possibly imagine. And, of course, you can find me on social media. Send me a message over on Twitter. You could find that at Pretty Dece Show.